and welcome to the Aussie Football Passport. And I've got a special episode today because I have Scottish independent football writer with me, Paul Murphy. Paul, welcome to the Aussie Football Passport.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me. Good to talk to you about this topic, something very interesting, close to my heart on
Yeah,
both sides.
yeah, definitely. So that's great. And Paul, I just wanted to give a quick plug to your wonderful book, Socceroos in Scotland, which is out now. Well worth a read. I'm waiting for my copy to get to me. But Paul, did you want to give us a quick overview, I guess, of what inspired you to write this book?
Yeah, well, I'd written one book for Fair Play Publishing, which is an Australian publishing house, and a lot of their books are fairly niche sports books, especially football. So I'd done one on a Swiss Thai football player, an autobiography, and I was thinking of an idea for a second book. And obviously, you think about things you know about, and that the publishing house might be interested in, but being as they're Australian based, and obviously the number of Australians that have gone to the Scottish Premiership, especially in the past 10 years, is growing remarkably. And obviously, we saw a few years ago at the World Cup, there were so many players with a connection to Scotland playing in Scotland, or had played in Scotland, or would in the future play in Scotland. So I thought, would be interesting to have a closer look and a deeper dive into those links. And then I started to think about the evolution of the Australian influence in the Scottish game has been quite significant. And it was quite interesting to see as well from the research, how much influence Scots had on the Australian game prior to the movement in the opposite direction. Obviously, lots of Scots went to play in Australia, and in the past 40 or so years, we've seen it much more traffic in the other direction, I think, especially the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of people do forget, particularly, I think it was the 70s and 80s, wasn't it, Paul, where a lot of Scottish players emigrated across to Australia to take part in the NSL, I believe it was at the time, or what it was known as at the time. And particularly in Melbourne and Sydney, I think most Scots ended up, but there was a few in other places around, obviously Perth and Brisbane as well, where I'm based. But it's quite a rich history, and it's not just music that Scotland and Australia have ties in, is it? So it's
Yes.
a wonderful story to tell, and I'm glad that you have, Paul. So it leads me to my next question. Have you got a favourite Aussie player who's played in the Scottish Premiership?
Well, I mean, as a Celtic fan, it has to be Tom Rogic. I mean, I do. I mean, I really like Scott McDonald as well. I thought he was a really, really important player for Celtic for a number of years. He scored some big goals, was instrumental in a couple of championship wins. But for me, Tom Rogic, just the way he plays is my type of player. The skill he has. Some of the goals he scored were obviously exceptional. He didn't tend to score ordinary goals. Almost every goal he scored was incredible quality. So yeah, I'd have to say Rogic would be my favourite of the Aussie players. And I did manage to interview him, and he was playing for Australia in the World Cup qualifier against Thailand.
Yes.
As I'm based in Bangkok, he did with the press rounds, and he's got a bit of a reputation for not being that happy to talk to the press. And yes, it did. The experience wasn't he wasn't the most talkative person, but as a player, I thought he was an exceptional talent.
Yeah, one of those players that left the talking on the field, much like another Aussie who played in the Scottish Premiership, Aaron Moy. I think both of them were renowned for not being very forthcoming in terms of their, I guess, off the field antics, if you like, or off the field speaking, but on the field, two very class footballers, weren't they?
Well, strangely enough, the day I spoke to Rogic, Aaron Moy was also down for press duties. So we had Rogic and Moy, and I was with the Australian journalist, so it wasn't just me one on one. And I think we were all kind of a bit, is this all they're giving us? So the two of them, and then after that, Matty Ryan came, and it was like, oh, okay, somebody who likes talking.
Finally.
So yeah, Matty Ryan was a bit of a relief after Moy and Rogic's, limited communication skills.
Yeah, fair to say. You had your work cut out for you that day, but thankfully Matt
Yes.
Ryan came in to save the day, as he likes to do. Matty, brilliant stuff. And I guess as well, Paul, in terms of I want to get your thoughts on what you think Australian players bring to the Scottish Premiership. Is there, I guess we've seen so many over the years now make the journey to the Scottish Premier League. Do you think it's I guess, without putting words in your mouth, do you think it's that sort of physicality that they bring?
I think that's a large part of it. Certainly in the process of writing the book, and talking to a lot of people that were, involved in, the players, coaches, journalists, a lot of them highlighted that aspect of the game, that there was a lot of overlap between what's valued in Australian sports and what's valued in the Scottish game. The athleticism, relishing, the physical challenges of the game. I think if it makes them a good fit for the Scottish football. But more than that, I mean, I think when players are moving from one country to another, there's so many barriers that can, you know, stop them being successful. But I think just a very similar culture, and obviously there's no language barrier. It makes it so much easier to fit in to a new dressing room. I think the mentality is quite similar as well. The sense of humour is quite similar. So it's more than, but obviously on the pitch, obviously that sort of relishing the physical battle is definitely up there with some of them. Not all players obviously have that profile, because Tom Rogic, I mentioned, was never known for that kind of style. But a lot of the players do fit the profile for sure.
And it's interesting you make mention there of Tom Rogic, definitely not renowned for his physical presence, but
Mm.
he was still relatively successful at Celtic, wasn't he? And then when you compare him to someone like a Daniel Arzani, who came to
Mm.
Celtic and it was, more technically proficient, shall we say, but
Yeah.
he really struggled at Celtic, didn't he? Injuries of course played a part, but he never really fitted in with Brendan Rodgers' Celtic, did he?
Yeah, I mean, he was fairly young as well, so
Mm,
there was that factor. But yeah, the injuries. But we've seen with Brendan Rodgers a few times. Sometimes the players arrive and they never really get a chance. So
mm.
I don't 100% trust Brendan Rodgers' views on players, and especially young players coming through. But at the same time, Arzani's not really gone on to prove Celtic wrong, if you know what I mean. So
Yeah.
from that point of view, I think not all players will work out, as you know, but that one definitely didn't.
Of course, I can back you up on
Mhm.
on your thoughts on Brendan Rodgers being a
Yeah.
Liverpool fan, because
Right.
yes, we definitely both rode the same roller coaster that is Brendan Rodgers as a manager at your football club. So we can certainly agree there. Now, Paul, I guess let's get into a bit of a preview of the Scottish Premiership for this upcoming season, which kicks off this weekend.
Mhm.
And there's been a very big transfer, and I know it probably pains you to talk about it being a Celtic fan, but Cammy Devlin has left Hearts and has joined his former manager, Derek McInnes, at Rangers, along with Lawrence Shankland as well. What are your thoughts on this move?
Well, I think Cammy Devlin definitely fits the profile of a typical Derek McInnes side. Not known for flair, he's a guy that's going to be into the midfield, work all day, put in a lot of physical challenges. And I think every player in the Scottish Premiership needs somebody like that, and it's a useful asset to have. And Devlin's obviously been at Hearts for 5 years, I think.
Mm,
He's 28 years old, so he's kind of should be at the peak of his powers. Possibly, you might argue that kind of move would have been better a couple of years ago to go to a bigger club. So the question obviously is can he I mean, obviously, I'm not saying a step up in level. Really,
mm.
we saw. I mean, Hearts finished ahead of Rangers last season, but can he make the step up to a club with bigger expectations, a fan base that's going to be much more demanding than it has been at Hearts? But obviously, he's got the experience. He's an Australian international, but unfortunate not to feature the World Cup. But the signs are he's a pretty safe bet for Rangers, because he's been one of the a strong player at this level for a number of years. Obviously, last season Hearts missed him when he's had that spell out injured, and that was maybe
Mm.
could have been the difference between being champions and not, because obviously their away form, especially towards the end of the season, was really poor. And perhaps in a couple of those games, maybe his presence could have swung the balance a little bit. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. Like I said, he's very much Derek McInnes signing. Obviously, he's moved there. Wants him to come with. I mean, he was. I mean, I know Devlin was linked with Celtic as well, but I think I'm not sure that's just media mischief. They often link players with both sides.
Yep.
Whether there's any truth in it or not, I've no idea. But yeah, I think it's hard to see him being a flop. I think he'll be a solid signing for Rangers ultimately.
Yeah, he's a known quantity. I guess both the coach knows him and therefore should play him, in the correct position, which is, such a revolutionary thing for some managers. But I guess that's good. But yeah, I'm very interested to see how he handles the pressure of being in that Glasgow fishbowl, right, with Celtic and Rangers there. It does break a lot of players, doesn't it? But I think, as you said, the experience he has been in the league for the past 5 seasons now should hold him in good stead. We hope for that. I mean, obviously, you probably don't, being a Celtic fan, but I'll stop bringing that up. But yes, it's a big move. And what's been the sort of reaction in Scotland that you've seen after the move's been confirmed, Paul? Have you seen anything that's, I guess, particularly stood out?
I think I mean, certainly what I've seen is most fans seem to be quite happy with the move. They do see it as one of those logical signings where it's again a low risk signing and a known quantity, as you said. So I've not seen anything I've not seen anything, you know, negative about it. But I mean, I think there's people on the Celtic side maybe more ways might say, well, he's a fairly average player. He's not a kind of game changing signing. He's just a solid player, but he's nothing to fear. Like bring in a superstar that's going to be making the difference in games. I did consider when I was writing the book as well. There's a clear difference in terms of the profile of Aussie signings for Celtic and Rangers. Celtic signings have tended to be attacking players, flair players, like, obviously Viduka, and flair players like Rogic and Moy, and then of course the goal scorer like Scott McDonald. Rangers, Craig Moore, Davy Mitchell, a bruiser of a striker. Muscat, obviously, is
Yeah.
knowing a lot for that, and then Tony Vidmar, more like an athletic fullback. So, it's kind of interesting to look at the difference, and I think there's certain ways of saying that a certain club has a certain philosophy over the years, and I think Cammy Devlin arguably suits the Rangers' philosophy more than Celtic.
Yeah, that's a very interesting, I guess, perspective that I guess probably might not be considered so much here in Australia because I guess a lot of football fans are just preoccupied about players making the move to as big a club as possible, and therefore it's kind of seen that it's a great move for Cammy Devlin. But yeah, the profiling of the club or the player and seeing sort of who fits the philosophy. So I guess given that, yeah, it should be a pretty good signing for Cammy Devlin to join Rangers, considering all of that, a hard-working player, and arguably probably what Rangers needed after last season, where they as well fell away, right? I mean, similar to Hearts, they had a back end of the season, though, that they sort of fell away and ultimately cost Danny Roll his job as well, and why they brought in Derek McInnes.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a great opportunity for both Rangers and Hearts last season, particularly Rangers, because obviously they're used to being this second top club over the past number of years, and Celtic were desperately poor at times last season. They obviously had turnover of managers. They hung in. They scraped wins. They kept turning up and just scraped. And of course, they kind of raised it a level towards the end of the season. It was, and maybe again, Rangers might, if they'd had somebody else in that, a Cammy Devlin type in that midfield, maybe he'd have made a difference in that final weeks of the season when they fell apart a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. So very interesting. So let's see what he can do. Hopefully, he has a good impact at Rangers and doesn't become another Matt Mackay, because that'd be terrible for him. But looking forward to this season, there's been a couple of Aussies join the Scottish Premiership. A couple more at Dundee United, a couple more at Motherwell, which both seem to be quite popular with Australian players at the moment. And then we've got a new goalkeeper in at St Mirren in the form of Jacob Chapman. I guess out of the 4 or 5 there, Paul, has one in particular caught your eye, or one or two of those new Australians joining the Premiership?
Yeah, I mean, I think Girdwood Reich, if I get that pronunciation right. I
Mm,
think he kind of stands out a little bit because his career path's been interesting because he's got
mm,
the Scottish connection, having played at youth level at St Johnstone.
mm,
At 22 years old, and I think he was, if I'm not mistaken, he was considered a hot talent when he was younger.
mm.
But he's been in America. He's gone back to New Zealand, and I see his age profile as well. I kind of like the look of his profile in terms of his age, the experience he has. I think that could prove to be quite an interesting one. And it looks like Jacob Chapman is going to be he's been earmarked as a starting goalkeeper.
Okay.
So I think he's obviously not going to be. He's not there to be a squad player. He's started all the League Cup games so far, so I expect him to be, you know, work out as a good signing for St Mirren. But yeah, there's been, certainly a couple of things. And Lachie Rose, he's hit the ground running. Three
Mm.
goals in two League Cup games. He's a little bit older, obviously. He's 27 now. But again, it's now or never for him in terms of making a move. I don't think he's not been to Europe before, right?
No, I don't believe so either, Paul. Yeah.
So I think it's interesting to go at that age to
Mm.
see if he can make something of himself in Scotland. But yeah, he certainly made a good start because even though the games have been against lower league opposition, getting off the mark in the first couple of games is definitely going to be good for his confidence.
Particularly for a striker, right? And he's not
Yeah.
been the most prolific striker in the A-League, which was what surprised me actually, to be honest, that he got the move there. So
Mm.
to Dundee United. So it was a surprise. He had a really good season at Newcastle Jets as well, who had a fantastic season. But yeah, it's a very interesting one, and I do wonder what sort of impact it has on Zach Sapsford, who was fantastic for Dundee United last season,
Mm.
wasn't he? Scored goals against both Rangers and Celtic, which is pretty good for a guy that's first, playing his first season in the
Mm.
Premiership. So, I mean, I know that he did get shifted out to sort of more of a wide role at times, and Lachie Rose is sort of the main number 9. So I wonder if, and Paul, if you probably think similarly to me, that might be the setup that Dundee United go with for this season, as Lachie Rose is the main man and Zach Sapsford out wide.
Yeah, I think that's a good possibility, and I think that again those League Cup games, I think that's been the lineup in a couple of those games,
Mm,
and I think Zach scored a couple of goals as well. So
yeah.
the early signs is that they're maybe linking up well. So they're definitely. I think I would be surprised if they start without them or one of them in the
Mm.
starting lineup. But I'd expect to see that in the first few games and see how it goes. But yes, that sounds like a promising combination they have.
Yeah, definitely. And hopefully, of course, yeah, being familiar with each other from the A-League. I mean, obviously they
Mm.
didn't play together, but that might assist with the link up there. And of course, Dundee United lost Ryan Strain to Falkirk, or they let him go, I should say, and
Mm.
that opened the door to Josh Rawlins coming in. So that looks like it might be a direct swap there. I think Josh has got a couple of games in those League Cup games so far to start the season, so promising signs for him as well.
Yeah, he started 3 League Cup games already, so he's again they've obviously sort of earmarked him as a starting player. Again, his profile is interesting. He went to Utrecht when he was younger, right?
Yes, he did. Yeah, yeah.
And I think if I remember rightly, he made his debut quite young, and
Yeah, I think it was around 16, 17 from
yeah,
memory. Went to Utrecht maybe after one A-League season or half an A-League season, and then came back home to the A-League, moved around once or twice, and then has found himself back in Europe.
yeah. So yeah, and he's a Australian under 23 international. So
Mm.
he probably feels that this is an opportunity for him to kind of show his reach his potential a little bit more. Because I think he's 22, so again, he's at a good age. I mean, United are kind of signing some interest, some players that have got some good years ahead of them, and I think he looks like a very interesting player in terms of the experience he's had already. The fact that he's been in Europe is probably going to benefit him. He's maybe obviously a bit older and wiser now, maybe more ready for the challenge. But yeah, I think he could be a very solid signing for United.
Yeah, and you raise a good point there, Paul, and probably one that I wanted to ask and sort of discuss a little bit was, the Scottish Premiership, you're looking at about, 36, 38 games a season
Mm,
just in league games, whereas in the A-League, you're looking at about 26, 27, and if you make it
mm,
all the way to the grand finals, it's known here, you're getting 30 games max in the league. That's even before the League Cups, which we've already seen, 3, 4 games
mm.
so far. Then you got the Scottish Cup as well. So it no doubt takes a bit of a toll on these A-League players, and that's where someone like Josh Rawlins' previous experience in Europe might come in handy. We saw actually with Adrian Segacic when he went to Portsmouth last season, his
Mm.
experience held him up in good stead, whereas a lot of the younger A-League players seem to get a bit of injuries there. So I wonder if that's something that some of these players and some of these clubs are going to have to manage this season for the debutants coming into the league, given the vast difference in amounts of games and the intensity that they played at with relegation being at stake there as well.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, but it's a squad game now, and I think these players will have to be prepared to be, sit out a couple of games sometimes to be rested, and obviously, especially the younger ones, they tend to to be less consistent, so they'll have to be patient perhaps at times.
Mm,
But yeah, definitely the physical challenges will be difficult at times, I imagine, and we've seen several Aussie players last season suffered injuries,
mm,
not just the young ones, but obviously
mm.
we saw a few that sat out a lot of the season. So yeah, hopefully these guys will not have that problem. But yeah, they will have to take time to adapt to that.
Of course, and that's all sort of crystal ball stuff. And while we're on
Mm,
the topic of crystal balls, I guess, uh, Paul, I wanted to get your opinion on some of the more experienced Aussies in the Scottish Premiership,
mm,
ones that I guess are looking for a second chance, particularly two at Aberdeen in the form of Kusini Yengi and Nick Suman. I think Nick Suman is more or less the backup keeper or even third
mm.
choice keeper there at Aberdeen. But Kusini Yengi, do you think with the change of manager there that he might get a chance? I mean, obviously we're sort of spitballing here and just guessing, but do you think the door might be ajar for Kusuni?
It's hard to say. I know Stephen Robinson made some positive noises, said he's going to have a chance pre-season, but these they've brought in two strikers,
Mm,
which is an indication that maybe he if he is on in their plans, he's going to have to fight for his place. He might just be a backup option.
mm,
I did read that in a couple of Japanese teams were interested in him again. Obviously, he spent
mm,
that loan, but he got injured again, so
mm,
he's missed a lot of football, and that's obviously for a new manager coming in might be looking at that thinking this guy's not going to be at his sharpest. So I think the odds are against it.
yeah.
I mean, I think he might be looking at other options, regardless of what's been said in public. I think in private, he might be weighing up a move somewhere else. But like I said, we can't rule out the possibility he gets a second chance. He's a talented player. I think he's been unlucky with these injuries. But Aberdeen, obviously, we imagine that they'll be looking at him in pre-season and seeing if he's going to be up to it or not. But I don't think he's not had any game time yet so
Mm.
far. So well, I think we'll see if he features in the Aberdeen squad this weekend. That will give us a better indication.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm,
Otherwise, again, we don't want to jump to conclusions, but you could more or less otherwise say that he's either rehabbing an injury or
yeah.
he is on his way out at Aberdeen, which, yeah, it seems to be the theme, unfortunately, for Kusuni the last probably 3 to 4 seasons. I mean, he had a bad luck at Portsmouth earlier, and
Yeah.
I think there was another club in Scotland that I can't remember, but yeah, it seems to be a little bit of a cycle, and hopefully he can break it. But yeah, it's not looking particularly good for Kusuni. Now, speaking of another player that's been slightly injury prone over the past couple of seasons, it's Ryan Strain. As I made mention,
Mm,
he's left Dundee United. He's joined Falkirk, who had a fantastic first season back in the Premiership last season, finishing in the top half there. Do you think Ryan Strain can work his way in? I mean, Falkirk have also had a few outgoings with the
mm.
bigger clubs coming and handpicking their best along the way. So do you think that might open the door for Ryan Strain?
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's a proven Scottish Premiership player. I'm sure, seen him over the years, what he can do, and I can't see any reason why he wouldn't make the right back spot his own. Or, I mean, he's started okay. He got a goal and an assist last week, so
Mm.
that's a strong start. It depends on who's up against in the competition, but he's certainly, he's shown he's good enough at this level. He's still only 29, so he's not past it by any means. So yeah, I mean, Falkirk will have to accept, obviously, if the better players moving on. I think it's like a Cammy Devlin situation. He's experienced at this level. They've watched him over the years, and they think he can do a job. So yeah, I think he'll be a good fit.
Yeah, it's probably more of a question for Ryan if he can keep himself off the treatment table,
Yeah.
really, isn't it? Given his injury history over the last couple of seasons, ultimately, what cost him a Socceroos jersey at the World Cup as well, because the lack of right backs in the Australian setup at the moment is quite astounding, and obviously Lewis Miller going down with an injury last season as well. Now, off to Hibs, and we saw Ante Suto sort of hit the ground running in that after that winter transfer from the Croatian league. Do you think he can win a spot in that Hibs lineup, or do you think he's more or less locked into that super sub role?
But I mean, from what I've seen, I like
Mm,
the look of this guy. I think possibly they'll be trying to find a way for him and Boyle to work together. And let's face it, Martin Boyle's now 33 years old, so he's
mm,
kind of, they've got to look at a succession plan, if you like.
mm,
Boyle's the way Boyle plays, it's about speed. It's about that
mm,
can't go on forever.
mm,
So they might be managing their minutes a little bit, but I think yeah, they've got to give him a chance. So I think they've got to try and see what he can do as a regular starter. Whether they can work together or not, I'm sure they're experimenting with that in
mm,
training and maybe the friendly games. But yeah, I think he deserves a chance to show, because I think what we saw of him last season, he looked like he could be a real asset.
mm.
And if I'm not wrong, he was in the squad for the World Cup. He was released from one of the provisional squads, right?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, I mean, his form at Hibs actually
Yeah.
landed him in the Socceroos squads in the March window from
Mm.
memory. He didn't get any game time, but then he got called up again to the Provisional World Cup squad.
Yeah.
So there's obviously something there, as you said, Tony Popovich likes as well, because he
Mm.
he, he did have to switch his international allegiance somewhere along those lines
Mm.
as well, from Croatia to Australia. So
Mm.
yeah, it's probably just now about building on that back half of the season and seeing if you can get a consistent a consistent amount of game time and therefore goals.
Yeah, I mean, I think this weekend will tell us, give us a lot of information about what these guys are going to do this season ahead, and what the clubs have planned for them, or how the clubs rate them. But I would not be surprised to see Suto in the starting lineup for Hibs this weekend. I'd like to see him in that, to be honest, because I think, like I said, what I saw of him, maybe lack of consistency a little bit is what's keeping him from that
Mhm.
starting spot. But if he's had a good pre-season, I think it's going to be it's quite an exciting player to watch.
Yeah, definitely. So fingers crossed for Ante. And look, we've touched on Martin Boyle there. Mr. Reliable, Jack Iredale, I don't think there's really too much to say about him, is there? He's pretty much locked and loaded at that sort of left side centre back in the back three there for Hibs. So long may that continue, unless you've seen anything else that suggests otherwise, Paul.
No, no, there was. I mean, I did notice he was subbed at half time last week in the European game. That was a bit of a
Mm,
disaster. What I understand, it was a tactical switch rather than because he'd been having. I think the whole team had a nightmare that game.
mm,
By the sounds of it, that's the only thing that makes me a little bit of doubt why he was
mm,
chosen to kind of to come off at half time, which is never a good thing for a player to be subbed at that point in the game.
mm,
But yeah, I think yeah, I expect to see him in the starting lineup
mm.
for most of the games this season, as he was last season.
Yeah, all
Mm.
right. No worries. Yeah, I think you're probably about right. Now I'm gonna ask for one cheeky last question. Paul, who's your prediction to win the Scottish Premiership this season?
It's really tough to predict after. I mean, I can't see Hearts repeating what they did last season.
Mm,
The early signs have not been good for them. They've lost
not at all.
they've lost some of their best players. So it's going to be between Celtic and Rangers again. I think looking at the signings Celtic have made, they need a couple more players. So it's going to depend a little bit on the transfer movement over the next month. I'm going to say Celtic. Because I still think if they get the right players in, they're going to have a slightly stronger squad. Martin O'Neill, I'm not inspired by him being the manager again. I think it's a lazy decision by the board who, as you may be aware, have not been doing a good job. Have been really inactive and non-communicative with the fans, and I think it's just they've not been proactive enough. But Rangers, I think McInnes is a limited manager. He's a solid Scottish Premiership manager, but there's a reason why he hasn't gone to a bigger club at this point in his career. But he will have them organised. He make them tough to beat, which obviously can win you leagues. Obviously, so I think it's going to be a bit of it's going to be tight. I can't see anything else but a fairly tight battle. Could go either way. But if Celtic can get a couple of better signings through the door in the next month, I'll go with Celtic.
Yeah. I think I have to agree with you there, Paul. It's just a sort of case that Celtic have just got enough quality to do the job, even though there is that complete disconnect between the board and the fans and the ability to come up with a good squad. It just feels like that's going to be the case. So it Rangers, I think Derek McInnes, how's he going to handle the pressure of being the Rangers manager? It's a big call. A lot of new signings in the door there as well, and how are they going to cope making the step up to play for Rangers? A lot of what ifs, whereas I think with Celtic, most of the squad is still there, but the quality probably isn't where it should be. So that's what might be the leveler, I guess, between the two sides in Glasgow. Yeah, hard to see Hearts repeating what they've done, considering the turnover of players, particularly their key players, and then what they've dished up in the Champions League qualifiers so far. Some pretty big warning signs, in fact, if you're a Hearts fan. So hopefully they can rectify that. But yeah, do you see a surprise packet this season coming through to challenge the duopoly of Glasgow?
Not really. I mean, we had obviously Motherwell were very strong last season, but again they've lost their manager. Hibs are very inconsistent. You never know what to expect. Hibs get on their day, but they certainly they're not strangers to beating Celtic and Rangers in one-off games, but they can't seem to kind of put together a run to kind of do what Hearts did last season and push them and mount an actual title challenge. So it's hard to see another team sort of pushing at the moment. But the surprise package is a surprise, so they'll go. So one that might surprise us.
Yeah. Hopefully there is, just to spice it up, but probably not so much for the Celtic and Rangers fans. They'll just be hoping for domination and a ding dong battle between themselves and their team to come out on top. All right, well that is it. Thank you very much, Paul, for your time. Really appreciate you going through the Aussies with me that are in Scotland, and of course, don't forget Paul's books, Socceroos in Scotland. I'll post a link on my social so you can have a look at that and grab a copy, because it is I'm very much looking forward to reading it. It's a great book, no doubt. And thanks again, Paul. Enjoy the Scottish Premiership, and no doubt we might catch up and see how the Aussies are going later on this year.
Yeah, pleasure talking to you. Thanks for inviting me on, and looking forward to a good season.
Thanks, Paul. All right, that's it for the Aussie Football Passport. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back soon with another episode. Thanks for listening. Bye now.